How do you summon and defeat the dragon boss in Ark? Where do you obtain the artifacts? And what are the best creatures to use in the fight? Well, let's break it down and have a look. And before we start, if you're interested in searching out a specific part of the boss fight or an artifact, make sure you check out the chapters below. So first up, let's talk about preparation for the caves. Unlike the Broodmother, the level of the creatures in most of these caves are much higher than the outside world, so you need to think carefully about what equipment and creatures you will want to bring along. You'll still need your basics, like a shotgun, a crossbow with some grappling hooks, as well as a pike and some med brews to heal through the damage, as well as the armour. So we're dealing with some ice caves in some of the cases here, so you need some high level fur armour, although if you have really good ascendant flak like I do, it has some really nice cold resist. And I've also pumped up 60 fortitude, so you combine that with the flak and it actually works out quite well. Overall, you're going to be wanting to bring the best possible weapons and armour into the caves. With the exception of one of the caves, they're all quite long and very, very involved. The first cave we're going to look at is the Northwest Cave, located in 1919. There is a path leading down the cliffside to the cave entrance. The creatures in this cave are the normal level, but it is so small inside that there's not really any chance of using a tame. If you follow the right hand wall until you get to a circular stone in the floor, you can keep going to the right, which will lead to the artifact, but there are pitfalls which will cause instant death, as do many of the passageways in this cave. However, if you take the second path from the right, it will lead to a ledge overlooking the artifact where you can nudge forward and pick it up from there. And if you take the time to learn the layout of this cave, it does contain yellow and red drops, but keep in mind that there is the risk of falling into the pitfall and losing all of your items. The next cave we're going to look at is the Swamp Cave, located at the lake in the Redwoods at around 6237. It is home to the Ariano, Titanoboa, Achatina, Arthroplura, Pulmonoscorpus and hordes of Meganeura, which are the mosquito-looking like creatures. The levels in here are about twice that of the regular world, and to top it off, it is filled with poisonous gas. So you'll need to bring multiple gas masks or sets of scuba to be able to breathe in the environment, as well as having backups just in case one runs out or breaks. The pools of water in this cave also contain leeches that are ready to stick to you whenever you jump into the water to grab loot, and I also recommend bringing a baryonyx into this cave. It fits through the entrance and the leeches will ignore the berry, and you can clear them with impunity while grabbing loot boxes on the way. Once inside at the first pool, there used to be a way up to the artifact from here in ASE, but it appears to be closed off for ASA. Head off to the left, keeping to the left wall, and this will take you eventually to a glowing red room with a pool. When you get to the other side, don't take the first exit to the left and head up to the right, and this will lead to the artifact. The cave has several explorer notes as well as blue, yellow and red supply crates, and the loot is a slightly different loot table to accommodate the difficulty, so it can be worthwhile searching them out. The next cave is the Snow Cave, and probably the most arduous cave on the island, located at 2932. It is extremely cold, has yetis, polar bears, direwolves and polovia, all of which are twice the level of the outside world. They are some of the hardest hitting creatures, as well as having knockback effects which will push you into unwanted situations. I'd normally recommend taking a Rex or a Therizino with lots of veggie cakes into this cave, as the polovia nest won't trigger while riding these dominating creatures. However, there are some blockages in the entrance that still prevent large creatures from fitting in, and so I chose to use a Thylacoleo this time, as you can pull out a weapon and shoot the nests with a tech rifle and cause them to pop out. It worked okay, but some of the nests are not visible to the naked eye, but if you were to combine this with a tech helmet, it would actually work quite well, as you can detect unseen enemies. And beyond that, if you actually have the ability to use your cryopods, you could always unload your Rexes and your Therizinos further into the cave and go from there. This cave is long and linear, has great loot, and now that the water no longer damages you, you can take your time and work your way through and eventually arrive at the artifact, which is aptly named the Artifact of the Strong. I do recommend bringing backup sets of armour. I lost several pieces, however I got lucky and getting some good fur drops, which kept me alive before reaching the end. And keep in mind that most of this cave will have respawned by the time you are done, and so you will need to fight your way out back again too. The last cave, the underwater caverns of Lost Hope, are located off the coast at 4589. If you use the available commands to disable clouds and fog, the underwater environment will be very clear to view without having to use scuba goggles. I'll leave the commands down in the description of the video. I recommend that you do not rush this cave, as there are various creatures that can be hidden in the grounds or the rocks. You'll find large groups of Megalodon, Electrophorus and Mantis ready to swarm you. So it is always a good idea to wait for them to come to you, so that you know how many you're dealing with. Other creatures that can complicate things are the Nideria, which are the jellyfish, and if you didn't bring a Basilosaurus, they can stun lock you to death before you have a chance to fight back. and the Ammonites, which are weak by themselves but they cause a rage debuff, attracting all the creatures in the local areas that you may not be ready for. Lastly, alpha creatures are quite common in this cave, and attacking one will also cause all the creatures nearby to attack you, including the docile Dunculus Cetus. The Dunkies have a higher armor and damage output than the Megalodons, and when they attack in swarms it can quickly lead to the death of even a well-bred Basilow, to the point where if too many attack, I'd actually recommend retreating and coming back and trying to take them on in smaller groups. The location of the artifact is not obvious in this cave, but once you find a pillar in the ground that looks like blue tech, the hole in the ground behind this will lead you to the artifact chamber. You can get to this pillar if you keep to the right hand wall as you head through the cavern. Be wary as you head down, as this narrow space can be loaded with creatures, and in my case there was an alpha with a half a dozen donkeys and they were waiting right on the artifact. Also, while I did not encounter them, you may also find Tusatuthus, the Mosasaur and other alpha variants throughout this cavern. Lastly, if you are keen to search out Explorer Notes, there is an above water section full of the regular cave creatures, spiders, snakes, bats and the like, which you can explore on foot, or if you have cryopods enabled you can deploy a creature to use. If you have the time, this cave has blue, yellow and red supply crates which have a higher level of loot due to the difficulty of the cave. Now that we have all the artifacts, we can discuss the boss fight. To be able to summon the dragon, you will need to be at least level 55 to summon the Gamma, 75 the Beta, and 100 for the Alpha. On top of that, you will need the trophy items from the Allo, Basilow, Giga, Tuso, Rex, and the Uranus. With the exception of the Giga, which only needs 1 and 2, you will need 5 of each for the Beta and 10 of each for the Alpha, with the exception of the Rex arms, which you will need 15 for the Alpha. With your summoning items secured, you will need to take them to an obelisk, specifically the red one if you're on a single player, while if you're on a server you can visit any obelisk or overland supply drop to summon yourself to the boss arena. The dragon is a massive creature, easily dwarfing both the other bosses in size. It will shoot explosive fireballs at the players and creatures, summoning waves of Pteranodons and Dimorphodons while it is flying in the air. Take care to note that the fireballs and the Dimorphodons will hit the player even if you are riding a mount. And while the dragon is on the ground, it will breathe fire and bite at the available targets. It is the fire breath that makes this fight a challenge, as it drains 20% of the health of whatever it hits over 10 seconds. It doesn't matter how much health your creatures have, you are in a race to beat the dragon before your creatures die. Having a good saddle is still a requirement, since the bite damage from the dragon can whittle down your creature's health before the breath finishes them off. For the choice of creature for this fight, I recommend the Therizino. This is due to the sweet veggie cake acting as a healing item for herbivores. It will keep them in the fight longer, and make sure you bring about 20 or so for each creature, especially in the alpha fight. This will help counteract the damage from the fire breath, as it has a damage over time, allowing the veggie cakes to do their thing. And when Magmasaurs are reintroduced into the ASA, this will be the perfect matchup for the dragon, as they are immune to fire, and when you give them metal ingots, they can fire long-range attacks from a distance. Their only downside is their size, restricting the number of which you can actually bring into the arena. Since this is a race, I'd recommend that you bring as many creatures as you can for the fight. The faster you do damage, the less chance there is of losing a creature or an expensive saddle. Bringing a Uranus is also quite a good idea, as the carriage rolls 20% reduction and 25% damage boost comes in quite handy. Albeit you can't reduce the fire damage, you can reduce the damage from all the other sources. The Theries that I used had around 17,000 to 20,000 health, with 1,000 melee and an 82 armor saddle. Even with that much, I ended up losing one during the beta fight. However, I was lucky to get a new saddle during my snow cave runs with 193 armor, and this actually made a massive difference during the alpha fight. And at least for the Gamma, I would recommend a baseline of 15,000 health and put the rest into melee. And note, if the player is close to the dragon, it seems to target you if possible, and you can use this to spin the dragon around between fire breaths, sharing the fire damage between the front and the backline creatures. All you have to do is make sure that you whistle the creatures around so it properly surrounds the dragon, and then circle around between the breaths, thus sharing the damage and giving the veggie cakes more time to heal between each breath. I actually appeared to take less damage during the alpha fight than the beta as a result of using this tactic. Well, that brings us to the end, and hopefully this is enough information for you to take down the Gamma fight at the very least, and where to find the artifacts to summon the boss. Make sure you leave me a comment if you have any other tips for fighting the dragon, otherwise leave me a like and I will catch you in the next one.